Hello, everyone. Uh, Thought I'd start up another one here. There's an issue that I raised in my last video, and it's been bugging me, and a few of you as well, I think, have noticed it. It was the policy, the tweeted policy of City of Hamilton regarding a certain section of town postal code where I guess it was a hotspot, and um, they basically said uh, BIPOC people should come, and that was the only group. Now, BIPOC means BIPOC means Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So the group they were excluding is my group. So naturally enough, it seemed odd because I've never seen anyone actually call out a group as being disincluded, right? To be excluded from vaccination. And so then I guess the idea at that point was, why did that happen? I did see that there was an associated article on a fellow from McMaster who was an associate professor of social work, who was in the group that was recommending policies. And I guess the idea is someone who's been involved in social work and understands it well would possibly understand the scenarios that are playing out in the city of Hamilton and be able to offer some recommendation. But fundamentally, to me, this is where I get sleepless nights almost on it. It's a science project. When you're deciding who gets injected first, it comes down to vulnerability, potential for you to be a host for this virus. Period. End of story. Now, if there's an aspect of physiology that ties into something external like skin color, then fair enough. But no such thing has been discovered. I have never heard of any particular aspect of susceptibility to the COVID virus that basically plays out that way. It's obesity, it's age, it's heart conditions, it's lung problems, it's all kinds of things that can cause COVID to be a very nasty disease for you, a very nasty virus. But I've never heard of anything that correlated with potentially, I guess, Indigenous people, and I'm not sure if that's because of the communities where Indigenous peoples are concentrated, are also isolated and therefore very tightly packed. You're once you and also resistance is low to a lot of things in these small communities because they don't get visited by the usual flus and things as often as everywhere else. But besides, and that comes to physical isolation, and I think that would apply to anybody who was physically isolated like that. So once again, I have not heard of any kind of a particular physiology that was tied to something you could identify by skin color. And, I think this gets to the whole point of what race is from a physical perspective. It's a very meaningless term in terms of biology. The darkness of the skin is like a minor aspect of genetic difference that, there's far greater variation within a certain skin color than there is between skin colors. Humanity just isn't arranged that way. So the idea of even trying to do something like that tells me that there's something else at work here. And it turned out that this particular professor had said right in the CBC article was studied critical race theory. So I think it's important to understand where people come from and what it means when someone says that. And I've attached to this note a few places to go look. there's a lot of jargon thrown around by people who are talking critical social justice as the overall umbrella to critical race theory. Um, it and it's they say things like equity. They say things like systemic racism. All of these terms, and they don't mean what a lot of people think they mean. And many of these people, I'm sure they've got good intentions. When you say you want to make the world less racist, and you want to say you want to give everyone an opportunity, then certainly you're going to get a lot of people supporting you. The problem with critical race theory and critical social justice in general is this is something that's snuck in. It hasn't been debated. It hasn't been like there was no one in the city of Hamilton last elections for mayor and the various councillors who ran on a social justice, critical race theory platform. I think if they tried doing that, they would not get in. So they're coming in via these kinds of avenues, like this particular group who's recommending policy. So policy recommendation teams that get brought in from places like McMaster. Now, I think it's a problem in that McMaster decided to send this man there as a person to recommend policy. Clearly, people who think that critical race theory and critical social justice is a good way to analyze the situation were in control when it came to who gave the recommendation for someone to provide their insight. It wasn't an engineer, wasn't they got a medical school there. It wasn't an epidemiologist from the medical school. It was this man. And when you look at what the entire structure of critical social justice is, it runs on the assumption, and you'll see this in the note that I'm sending, that Western civilization is basically a racist structure. Everything is racist. And it's the entire premise of the whole theory is somewhat like a religion in that it's unfalsifiable. So you either believe that it's true, and if you don't believe it's true, you're just ignoring reality, and it's still true. And it's, in fact, if you push back against it, it's a sign that you're in denial. So if you ask questions about it and try to push back against it, that's just a sign that critical race theory is true. So it's unfalsifiable from their own standpoint, and they believe that standpoint's everything. There's no objective reality that can be checked against with data. The whole world is racist, and you just have to believe them. To send someone, and I guess it's concerning in two ways. The University of McMaster sent this person to recommend public policy, who seems to have this theory, in the front of their mind. It's possibly something they're teaching in their courses at social work in that department of social work in McMaster. And if that's the case, which seems to be the way it is, given the way he's talking in his public letters and what's been written about him, he's teaching people to go out and do social work who also believe this. So imagine this. You're a person who's really down on their luck. They've got serious problems. They're you're either drug addicted or you're whatever, and you have a social worker, and that social worker believes in critical race theory. So if you're the wrong colored skin, or if you're not the right profile of person, you are in fact responsible for all the terrible things that are happening in the world. And those are the people that are supposed to go out and administer social work and provide social workers and do all the things that the people who are really marginalized and have problems are looking for help. So is that person going to administer help evenly and efficiently and for everybody? It seems as though that's an impossibility for someone like that. So it's concerning in many ways. It's concerning because these people are affecting public policy in the most critical parts of decision making, such as who gets vaccine, who doesn't. They're doing it in a way that is unscientific, and they're producing people that are more and more people who are leaving that university have the same ideas, and these ideas aren't even contestable. They consider anyone who would contest them to be just a sign of more racism. So it's I think it's a critical point right now. We've got people who are openly calling for policies to be changed based on reasons that make no sense scientifically, and it looks like people are afraid to push back. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, on the team that he was on who would probably disagree with much of what he has to say, but they're cowed into silence for fear of being called a racist. And when you use that kind of weapon, when your whole premise can't be challenged, and if it is, you use weapons like calling someone a racist to shut them up, that has to be challenged, openly challenged. And unfortunately, the CBC, which was where the article was written, it looks like it's 100% behind the critical race theory, critical social justice, and much of mainstream media seems to be the same. So if you're relying on CTV, CBC, major newspapers to be the critical middle of the road kind of position on these things and ask hard questions of these people, I think you're going to be disappointed in many ways. So I think it's up to us as individuals to kind of educate ourselves on these terms and push back where we hear it, and not accept the fact that someone's going to call you something nasty and just shut up. You have to push back on them and say, no, I'm not what you say I am. And judging entire groups of people, identity politics taking over, and judging entire groups of people to be bad and born bad simply by the color of their skin or something like that is wrong. And it was wrong 100 years ago. It's wrong now. And reverse racism, if that's what you want to call it, or pushing back against the majority to say, now you're not going to get a vaccine because of all the things that happened in the past. Now, it just doesn't make any sense. There's these people who are alive today had nothing to do with what happened in the past, and you have to take these things as a medical condition, period, end of story, and deal with it as a medical condition and nothing else when it comes to vaccine. And then we talk about social plans and social programs, and have an argument about what makes the most sense. But it has to be a discussion. It has to be done, and it can't be just my way or the highway. And if you disagree with me, that means you're a racist. And one of the points I like to make too, it's interesting because what people like this doctor of social work say is disproportionately people who fit into this profile of Black, Indigenous, people of color have been affected by the virus. And it's true that in terms of infections, many of the people who are living in the big cities, who are living in multiple families in a say a house, such as up in Brampton, hotspots like that, Scarborough, parts of Etobicoke that were hotspots. There's a number of reasons why, and it's true that those people are often in those scenarios where they're working jobs and they're packed in tighter quarters, and so they are turning up as disproportionately. And absolutely, we need to go into those hotspot areas and vaccinate everyone. That's absolutely part of it. But when you look at effect of this virus, the effect has gone across all lines. If you look at half of the people who are dead, they all came out of long-term care. So roughly 50% of the dead in Ontario were long-term care people. They weren't BIPOC. They were the vast majority of them were just white people. So I think that's being affected by the virus too. You're dead. So um, these ideas that you're affected in larger numbers, um, a higher percentage than your overall percentage of the population, is true in major centers, but it's also true that a lot of people are dead who who are not BIPOC, and they don't mention that when they're talking about these kinds of things, these kinds of ratios. So anyway, it needs to be a discussion. Brave people from academia need to step up, and McMaster needs to represent itself properly in the community. You know, they're the largest post-secondary institution in Hamilton, and an internationally known university, and here they are allowing their contribution to policy on vaccination to be uh, of that kind of quality, and it's simply unacceptable. So anyway, sorry for the long rant. If you feel like it, give a read to some of the pieces I've included with this. But I think when you hear systemic racism, when you hear equity, when you hear all of these terms that the woke tend to use and the critical social justice warriors tend to use, which is, it's the same thing: woke, critical social justice warriors. Um, it's good to understand what it actually means. So anyway, here's hoping that things are going good with everybody. The weather seems to be turning around, and hopefully we'll be going north soon. Anyway, we'll see you guys around at some point this year, I'm sure. Talk to you later. Bye.